Hey, it's Monday, April 6th. We're diving into Matthew 22 today. Now we're officially in Holy Week. And Holy Week, as you know, it's when we journey to the cross. We experience the silence of Saturday, and then the joy that comes on Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. Now I'm outside today. It is a gorgeous day. And I don't know about you, but I've been cherishing outdoor time significantly more than maybe any other season of my life. And it reminds me, this is completely unrelated to Matthew, but I have a video camera and I'm a pastor, so it's a dangerous combo. I was reading through the Bible with Miles, my 4-year-old. We did the story of Adam and Eve and how we were created to be in the garden forever with God. And I got to thinking about how we were created for the outdoors. We were created for majestic nature and beauty. And there is something about being outside that is so rejuvenating. And I think it's one of those things that can draw us closer to our Savior, especially when we are able to silence some of the noise. So I hope you have been able to enjoy the beautiful weather we're having. Let's hope and pray that it holds, though next week's supposed to be kind of rough. But let's dive back into Matthew here. You see, this week we'll be having a special video on Thursday and on Friday for Maundy Thursday and Good Friday. What that means, though, is we will not have a separate Matthew-specific video on those days. But we are going to have one today, Tuesday, and on Wednesday for you. So I trust these videos and the special services on Thursday and Friday will be a blessing to you. So today we're going to focus on Matthew 22, 34 through 39. It's the greatest commandment. We know from yesterday that Jesus has entered Jerusalem. He's entered the last week of his earthly life, and he has some very serious and important work to accomplish yet. Now, this section of Matthew, it focuses on how Jesus, he asserts his messianic authority over Jerusalem. So he enters the city processing as a humble king. And then he debates and rebukes the religious leaders, and he pronounces woes over the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. And in the midst of this, we get one of the most memorable, important, and practical teachings of Jesus' ministry. It's one of those passages that I feel it's so potent that I reference it in like 1 out of every 3 messages that I give, because it's just so at the heart of who we are as God's people. And it's the greatest commandment. So you see a Pharisee, he's trying to test Jesus because of course they are. That's what they do. They try and test him and trap him. They want to hear from Jesus his view of what law is the most important. Now, I give the Pharisees a hard time because they deserve it. But this is something that rabbis would actually often debate back in the day. It's not too unusual. They're trying to determine out of all the commandments which ones are light and which ones were more weighty. So Jesus' answer, it's to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And then love your neighbor as yourself. These 2 commandments sum up, basically, the entire law and prophets. That's it. Love. Easy, right? No. The interesting thing here, though, is that often scholars would equate things such as reverence or holiness or sacrificial living or being just as the most important. Those are kind of the things they would often fall to. But Jesus, being God, being truly love personified, you know that holiness and reverence, it flows out of love, not the other way around. Love is the starting point, and that's why it is the greatest. And truly to love God in this way while being sinful beings such as ourselves, it proves to be easier said than done. And it's even harder sometimes to love our neighbor with that same sacrificial, kingdom-minded, deeply rooted love. Call to love God in that way, but also our neighbor. And included in our call to love our neighbor, it's to have a love for ourselves as well. We usually say it more in treat others the way you want to be treated, and there's an element to that, but we have to acknowledge how we want to be treated and the fact that to love ourselves because we are a creation of God worthy of love. So fulfilling these two commandments will fulfill the deepest longings of the human condition, of human beings. We're created in the image of the one who is love. And so fulfilling these will help us live into that. So when in doubt, what do? You love. When you want to better understand God, what do? You love. When faced with a choice between judgment and love, what do? You love. You see, it's easier said than done, but it is so worth pursuing. For Jesus, he gives this command to the very ones who are going to be bringing him to trial, to be sentenced to death. And his teachings here, at least as I read it, it doesn't come off to me as like a rebuke. He does that in other teachings with the Pharisees, absolutely, but I almost view this more as almost like a plea. A teaching that Jesus gives the Pharisees in hopes that after his death, after his resurrection, and the reports of it come back to these Pharisees, for them to remember it's all about love. For Jesus going to the cross, we know it's the greatest act of love in the history of the world. So, we seek to live into this command, to love God, to love neighbor, to love self, because through loving and living this way, we walk closely in step with our God, who is love. A few questions for you to consider today. First, how are you doing at loving God, loving your neighbor, and loving yourself during this season? Oftentimes, our calibration gets out of whack. We're so focused on one, we neglect the others. So if so, which one do you need to invest in during this time while not sacrificing the other ones? Next question is this: what does it look like to love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind? Practically speaking, what does that even look like? And how might we cultivate the full range and depth of love for God and others in this way? And the final question. You see, we don't often think about loving ourselves. It sounds selfish, and it very quickly can become selfish. But at the same time, we are called to care well for ourselves. So, how are you caring well for yourself during this time? Friends, I hope this video finds you well today. I'm looking forward to the videos ahead and the week ahead. May you be well today. See you next time.